You know how everyone tells you to take time for yourself and figure out what you really want? Well, I did. I asked my husband for some space to clear my head. I thought we'd reconnect stronger. Instead, he moved on faster than I ever imagined, and now he's got a whole new family. And I'm still sitting here, wondering how the hell I became replaceable. I'm Rachel. I'm 35. And 2 years ago, I thought I was doing the brave, adult thing by admitting I needed to step back and breathe. I had no idea I was opening the door for my husband to quietly walk out of my life and straight into someone else. Mark and I were together for 11 years, married for 8. We weren't some fairy tale couple, but we were solid, or so I thought. We had a routine, we had stability, we had a daughter, Leela, who's now 6. I stayed home with her the first few years and only recently went back to work part-time as a marketing assistant. Mark was always the dependable one. Quiet, steady, kind of emotionally reserved, but reliable as hell. He made dinner most nights, did school pickups when I worked late, always remembered to buy almond milk for my cereal. That kind of guy. And me, I was unraveling. Not in some loud, dramatic way, not with affairs or meltdowns, just quietly falling apart. I'd look at myself in the mirror and barely recognize who I was. Mother, wife, employee, scheduler, grocery shopper, family calendar manager. But nowhere in there was me. I missed the woman who used to travel. The one who had friends and brunch and a personality that wasn't entirely shaped by preschool routines and PTA meetings. I felt like I'd dissolved into roles I hadn't consciously chosen. Like I'd fallen asleep in my own life. I remember the moment it really hit me. I was sitting in the car outside Target, holding a bag of diapers, and I just started crying. Ugly crying, over nothing, or maybe over everything. I texted Mark and said, "Can we talk tonight?" That night, I told him I was struggling, that I felt lost, that I didn't know who I was anymore. I expected him to tell me I was overthinking, or maybe offer to watch Leela more so I could go to therapy or take yoga or whatever. I didn't expect him to just sit there, nodding, barely looking at me. "I get it," he said, "whatever you need." So I said the thing I'd been turning over in my mind for weeks, that maybe I needed space. Time to think. Maybe I could stay at my sister for a bit, take some time to journal, go on a short solo trip. He didn't argue, he didn't beg me to stay, he didn't ask questions. He just said, "Okay, let me know what you want me to tell Leela." That should have been my first warning sign, that he was too calm, too ready. I packed a bag and moved into my sister's guest room. Told myself it was temporary, just a couple weeks, maybe a month. I started therapy, took long walks, tried journaling. It was supposed to be empowering. But it was. Because while I was staring at walls and trying to rediscover my identity, Mark was moving on. And not in a slow, tentative way. Within 3 weeks, he stopped texting to check in. Within 2 months, he'd rearranged Leela's room and started repainting the guest bedroom. And by month 4, long before I was ready to come home, he casually dropped a bomb in a co-parenting text. "FYI, just a heads up, someone new will be around Leela next weekend. Her name's April." Someone new. I sat with that text for 20 minutes, rereading it, trying to understand how the man I lived with just months ago was already introducing another woman to our daughter. I thought I was having a panic attack. I called him immediately. "Who the hell is April?" He was calm, measured, told me they'd met at a work conference, that it wasn't serious, but he wanted to be transparent, that she was good with kids, that she wasn't replacing me. I couldn't even speak, I just hung up. The next time I saw Leela, she talked about April like she was some magical unicorn. She bakes cookies and lets me mix the dough, and she draws pictures with me, and worst of all, she's really nice to Daddy. They laugh a lot. I wanted to scream, but what right did I have? I'd left, I'd asked for space. I'd walked out the door with my suitcase and my therapist's blessing, and I didn't even see that it might not swing back open when I was ready. Mark didn't cheat on me, he didn't slam the door or yell or disappear, he just let me go, and then moved on. The kicker, when I told him I was ready to come back, that I wanted to work on things, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "I think we're past that now, Ratch, I'm happy, and April's pregnant." Just like that, no warning, no discussion, no chance. It wasn't just that he moved on, it's that he built an entire new life, one where I didn't fit anymore. And now, every other week, I drop Leela off at a house that used to be half mine, but is now filled with fresh paint, baby toys, and a woman who managed to be everything I was. And the space I asked for, it's still here, just a lot emptier than I ever expected. The first time I saw April in person, I froze. It was Leela's spring recital. Parents packed into the tiny auditorium, squinting at the stage through phone cameras and whispering, "That's her," second from the left. I came early, got a front row seat like always, even wore that stupid floral dress Mark used to say made me look extra summery. I was fixing my lipstick when I saw them walk in, Mark and April, hand in hand, with April visibly pregnant and glowing in that smug, serene way that only women deeply entrenched in the honeymoon phase ever glow. And Leela? She let go of Mark's hand and ran to her. Not me, it's her. April bent down and Leela threw her arms around her neck, giggling. Then I watched my daughter, my baby, place both her palms on April's belly and say something that made her laugh. My stomach twisted like I'd been punched from the inside out. I don't even remember the recital. I sat there clapping at the wrong times, staring down at my hands, feeling like some discarded first draft of a woman while the final version, the upgrade, sat a few rows behind me, smiling and glowing and winning. Afterward, Mark waved, like nothing had happened, like we were just two old friends seeing each other at a barbecue. April approached me, polite as hell. She smiled and said, "Hi, Rachel, it's nice to finally meet you." Her voice was calm, soft, genuine. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't find anything sharp enough to stick. She wasn't smug. She wasn't rude. She didn't try to be overly familiar or pretend we were friends. She just existed gracefully in the exact place I used to stand. I faked a smile and nodded, "You too." Then she turned back to Leela, bent down to fix her ponytail, and I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. The weeks after that were a blur. Every time Leela came home from Mark's, she had another April story. April helped her build a volcano for science class. April made the best lasagna ever. April painted Leela's toenails. April sang lullabies with a ukulele. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the ukulele out of her hands and snap it in half. But I smiled. I said things like, "That's nice, honey, and sounds like you had fun." Inside, I was falling apart. I tried dating, downloaded the apps, bought a new top, even went out with a guy named Derek who worked in advertising and made terrible dad jokes. But halfway through the second date, I caught myself staring at the corner of the restaurant, imagining what Mark would say about the appetizers. I went home and cried into my pillow until I fell asleep. The worst part wasn't losing Mark. Not really. We hadn't been happy for a long time. I think I knew that deep down. The worst part was that he was suddenly everything I'd always asked him to be, just not with me. He laughed more, he played with Leela more, he smiled in photos now, he held April's hand in public and told her she looked beautiful. I know because Leela told me. She said, "Daddy always says nice things to April. He tells her she's doing a good job." I stared at her when she said it, completely frozen. He never said that to me. Not once. Not in all the years I stayed up with our colicky infant. Not when I planned every birthday party down to the balloon colors. Not when I forgot myself for the sake of being his wife. It was like he'd read a manual after we separated, one I'd begged him to even skim while we were married. But with April, he didn't just read it. He memorized it, mastered it. I called him once after a bottle of wine. "Stupid, I know," I said, "I'm glad you're happy, but why couldn't you have done all that with me?" He was quiet, then he said, "I didn't know how, Rachel, not back then, not with how things were, but I've grown." I laughed bitter, broken laughter. "So I was your practice wife." "No," he said, "you were the person who showed me what I was doing wrong." I hung up before he could finish. I didn't want to hear that I'd been his teacher. I wanted to be the one he loved enough to learn for. Instead, I got to be the cautionary tale. It wasn't just emotional anymore. It was logistical too. April moved in. The baby came early, a boy. Leela suddenly had a half-brother. I saw a photo of the four of them at the pumpkin patch. Matching flannel. Pumpkin spice lattes. Mark holding the baby in a carrier across his chest. Leela on April's shoulders. It was everything I ever wanted. Everything I used to beg him for. I sent the photo to my best friend. She texted back, "What the actual fuck?" I wanted to delete it, but I kept it, tortured myself with it, stared at it on nights when the apartment was too quiet and the loneliness too loud. I thought maybe Mark would hit a wall eventually. Maybe he'd realize April wasn't perfect. Maybe the stress of a newborn would wear him down and he'd finally say, "God, I miss Rachel. She was the strong one." But that wall never came. His life kept ascending, while mine stayed stuck somewhere between self-help books and existential dread. One night, after Leela had gone to bed, I sat in the kitchen, holding a cup of tea I didn't want, and said out loud, "I should have never left." And just like that, the guilt hit me like a truck. Because I had left, I was the one who walked away. I asked for space. I opened the door, and he walked through it into someone else's arms. I thought I was pressing pause. Turns out I'd pressed eject. And now, I'm the one who can't find her way back in. The first time Leela called her baby brother my family, something in me snapped. We were walking back from the park. She was skipping beside me, holding an ice cream cone, chattering about how baby Owen had giggled when April blew raspberries on his belly. She said it with so much joy, so much love, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "My family," she said again. "Me, Daddy, April, and Owen." I stopped walking. She turned to look at me, confused. "What's wrong, Mommy?" And I lied. I said, "Nothing, sweetheart," because what the hell was I supposed to say? "Actually, that's not your family. I'm your real family. I'm the original." But I couldn't, because technically she was right. They were her family now, just one that didn't include me. The walk home felt like a funeral march, every step heavier than the last. I spent the next few days in a daze. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I kept hearing those words in my head, my family. I called my sister, told her everything. She tried to reassure me. "Leela's still your daughter, you're her mother, that never changes." But it did change, maybe not legally, but emotionally, spiritually. It changed the moment she looked at April with the same affection she used to reserve for me. And the worst part was, I couldn't even blame April. She wasn't trying to steal my daughter. She was just being there, doing the things I used to do, packing lunches, reading bedtime stories, fixing braids. And because she wasn't me, she did it all without resentment, without burnout, without the slow drip bitterness that had infected me by year 6 of marriage. One night, Leela asked if April could come to her school art show. I said no, instinctively, immediately, reflexively. "But why not?" she pouted. "Daddy said she could." I wanted to scream that April wasn't her mom, that she didn't get to be there for firsts, that she hadn't earned it. Instead, I said, "Because this is our time." But it didn't matter, because at the art show, April came anyway. I saw her slip in beside Mark in the back, wearing a soft gray sweater and that ever-polite smile that drove me insane. The teachers even thanked her when the show ended, like she was just another proud parent. Afterwards, Leela ran to her, not to me, to her. She held up her crayon drawing of our family, Mark, April, baby Owen, herself, and me, off to the side. Smaller, fainter. Like a memory. Later that night, I cried in the bathtub until the water turned cold. I thought about how I used to be everything to someone, to two someones, and now I was an option, a shared custody calendar slot, a name on school forms. That's when I started doing what I promised myself I wouldn't do. I began comparing our lives, mine versus theirs. Their house had a swing set, a chalkboard wall, matching Christmas stockings even for the dog. April's Instagram, which I swore I wouldn't check but checked every damn day, was full of smiling photos. Sunday hikes, family breakfast, crafts with the kids. Everything color-corrected, filtered, curated for joy. And mine. My apartment smelled like takeout. The couch had a rip in the armrest I never got around to fixing. My fridge was a graveyard of expired salad dressing, and the only pictures on my phone were screenshots of text threads with my therapist. I started spiraling, hard. I showed up to pick up Leela one day, and she didn't want to come with me. Said she wanted to stay and help April with Owen's tummy time. Mark gave me that neutral, polite smile. "She can come in a bit, we're just finishing up dinner." I said, "She's my daughter. You don't get to decide when I pick her up." His eyes narrowed. "She's not a possession, Rachel." April stood quietly behind him, holding Owen on her hip like some Earth Mother reincarnated. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her very presence was enough. I left with Leela 10 minutes later. She cried in the car. "I do like when you yell," she said. I wasn't even yelling, but it didn't matter. Because somewhere along the line, I had become the unfun parent. The one who didn't bake cookies or play guitar or do science experiments on weekends. I was the rigid one, the tired one, the angry one. I was the before, and they were the after. I started skipping therapy, started drinking wine every night instead. I told myself I deserved it, that I needed it to sleep. But sleep didn't come. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark looking at April the way he never looked at me. I kept trying to tell myself I wasn't jealous, that this wasn't about April, that it was about what I lost, but that's a lie. I was jealous. Jealous of how she'd walked into a life I built and made it better. How she got the version of Mark I begged for. How she got the daughter I raised and the baby I always wanted but never had. Jealous that she was everything I couldn't be, and still looked well-rested doing it. But even under the jealousy, there was something colder, sharper. I didn't just miss Mark, I didn't just resent April. I hated who I'd become. I used to be vibrant, social, hopeful. I used to write poetry, dance in the kitchen, make plans. Now I lived in yoga pants, scrolled Zillow listings I couldn't afford, and avoided eye contact with other moms at school pickup. I was disappearing. And the scariest part, no one seemed to notice. One Friday afternoon, I picked Leela up early from school. Mark hadn't expected it. He was supposed to get her that weekend, and I'd already agreed to the schedule. But something in me snapped. I needed my daughter. I needed her close. I needed to feel like something in my life still belonged to me. I told the office there, been a schedule mix-up, signed her out, and drove us straight to the beach. It wasn't warm enough to swim, but we walked the shoreline collecting shells like we used to when she was little. She laughed, ran ahead, chased seagulls. For a few hours, I felt like mom again. We got tacos, shared a soda, played 20 questions in the car. And when we got home, I pulled her into my lap on the couch and said, "Let's do something special this weekend. Just us girls, no schedules, no rules." She looked up, hopeful. "Can we bake cookies?" "Absolutely," I said, "any kind you want." For a moment, I saw it, the old Leela. The one who used to crawl into my bed at night, who called me her best friend. The one I swore I'd never let anyone take from me. But the next morning, the text started. "Mark, hey, where, Leela? School said you checked her out." "Mark, it's my weekend. Can you call me, please?" "Mark, Rachel, this isn't okay. You can't just take her." I ignored him. I told myself I wasn't kidnapping her. I was being a mother, reclaiming my place, reminding Leela that I was more than just the woman who packed school lunches every other week. But when Leela asked if she could call her dad to say goodnight, something shifted. I said, "Let's just have our time right now. Daddy can wait." She looked at me strangely, not angry, not scared, just confused. Like she didn't recognize me. We baked cookies anyway, chocolate chip. She mixed the batter while I tried to blink away the guilt. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a cop to knock on my door. That night, after she fell asleep on the couch, curled into a little ball like she used to when she was a toddler, I stood in the hallway staring at her. And I knew I wasn't trying to be her mother again. I was trying to compete. Compete with a woman who had never tried to win. And worst of all, I was using Leela to do it. I called Mark. He didn't pick up. So I texted, "I'm bringing her back in the morning, I'm sorry." He replied almost instantly, "Thank you." The next day, I dropped Leela off at their house. April answered the door. She had Owen on her hip, burping him gently, dressed in a soft blue cardigan and socks that looked hand-knitted. She smiled, "Hi, Rachel." I froze. Behind her, Mark was at the kitchen table with Leela, coloring something on construction paper. Leela looked up. "Mommy, we're making a welcome banner for Daddy's parents. They're coming for Owen's baby blessing." I didn't even know Mark's parents were coming to town. I stepped inside just for a moment to kiss Leela goodbye, but the second I did, I felt it, the warmth, the ease, the sense that I was stepping into someone else's home. April offered me coffee, like a guest. Mark nodded politely, like I was a neighbor. And Leela, she ran back to her coloring without another glance. I got in the car and drove 3 blocks before I pulled over and sobbed. Ugly, broken sobs that rattled my entire body. My hands shook so badly I couldn't start the engine again. I sat there for nearly an hour, tears soaking the steering wheel until my phone buzzed. A message from my sister. "You free for dinner? You sound like you need to not be alone." She was right. Because I was always alone now. Even when Leela was with me, it felt like half of her heart lived in another house. I told myself I didn't want to be the full-time mom again, that it was good for Leela to have balance, that shared custody was the mature way. But the truth, I missed being her person. I missed bedtime giggles. I missed her asking me questions that had no answers. I missed making pancakes on Sunday mornings and finding her socks stuffed into couch cushions and overhearing her sing Taylor Swift songs to her stuffed animals. I missed being central to someone. Now I was orbiting. I told my sister all of it over wine and microwave lasagna. I cried. She listened. She said something that lodged deep in my chest. "You can't win a game no one's playing." I didn't understand at first. She explained, "April, not in a battle with you, Ratch. Mark isn't trying to hurt you. You left because you needed something you couldn't define. He moved on because he thought you meant it. And now, you're the one trying to fight your way back into something that doesn't exist anymore." I hated how right she was. I went home that night, sat in the quiet of my tiny kitchen, and stared at the chipped tile. And I thought, what if it's me I need to reclaim, not them? What if I stopped chasing the family I lost and started figuring out what I want, outside of the role of wife or mom or ex? I didn't have an answer. But for the first time in a long time, I had a better question. The next Monday, I walked into a job interview wearing the one blazer I hadn't donated in my "I'll never do office work again" phase. It was for a copywriting position at a boutique agency. The hours were flexible, the office small and bright, the kind of place with ferns in the windows and cold brew on tap. Not a dream job, but it was mine to chase. Not a compromise, not something I fell into because of Mark or motherhood. Mine. I got the offer 2 days later. When I told Leela, she looked up from her juice box and said, "Does that mean you'll be happier now?" It floored me. I hadn't realized she could see it, how lost I'd been. "Yes," I told her, "I think it might." Things didn't fix overnight. The apartment was still too quiet. The fridge still depressingly understocked. But I started building again, brick by brick. Morning runs, new playlists, group therapy, a book club that I actually went to instead of ghosting after one awkward session. I even stopped checking April's Instagram. Well, mostly. But then something happened. One night, I was helping Leela with homework, and she said, "Did you know April and Daddy met before you left?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" She shrugged, chewing her pencil. "I dunno. I heard April say she remembered when I had my unicorn backpack. That was like preschool." I froze. Leela was in kindergarten when I left. Her unicorn backpack was from before that. I didn't say anything, just helped her finish her worksheet and tucked her into bed early. But my brain was already spinning. Preschool. Back when Mark still came home on time. Back when things were tense, but I didn't think he'd actually checked out yet. I told myself kids get timelines mixed up. I told myself April probably saw the backpack in a picture. But the next day I cracked. I called Becca, one of the other moms from our old playgroup. We hadn't talked in months, but I remembered she worked in HR at the hospital where Mark used to consult. I asked casually at first, "Hey, you ever meet April, Mark's new partner?" Dead silence on the line. Then, yeah, she used to work in oncology admin. Pretty sure she transferred departments right around the time you guys split. Wait, worked with him. Becca hesitated. I'm not trying to start anything, but yeah, they overlapped. There were rumors, Rachel. People noticed them getting coffee together. A few of us figured they were a thing before the separation, not after. My stomach dropped. I thanked her, hung up, and sat at my kitchen table staring at the peeling laminate for a full 10 minutes. So it wasn't all in my head. The glow, the way April slid in so smoothly, the perfectly timed rebound, the fast-tracked romance. It wasn't just fate. It was plotted. Or at the very least, seeded, long before I left. I couldn't breathe. I thought about all the nights I lay awake wondering what I'd done wrong. All the therapy sessions spent blaming myself for needing space. All the guilt. And suddenly, it felt like none of it was mine to carry. I pulled out my phone and opened our old shared Google Photos album, one Mark never deleted. There was a photo of a company picnic just a few months before I moved out. I zoomed in on the background. There she was. April standing 2 feet from Mark, smiling, her hand on a cooler, his turn just slightly toward her. And I saw it, the tilt of his head, the comfort in the distance between them, the knowing. My hand was shaking when I set the phone down. All this time, I'd been telling myself I opened the door and he'd walked out. But maybe, just maybe, he'd already been halfway gone before I ever touched the doorknob. That weekend, when Mark came to pick up Leela, I met him at the door instead of letting her run out. "Did you and April know each other before we split?" I asked flatly. His mouth tightened. "We worked together." Was it more than that? He hesitated. That pause said everything. "It wasn't physical," he said, "not until after." "But emotional." He looked away. "I don't think that's relevant anymore." I laughed, sharp, bitter. "It's relevant to me, Mark. You let me walk away thinking I was the one who gave up. All that guilt, I swallowed it whole. And you, what? Just let it happen because it made your exit cleaner." He didn't deny it. He just said, "I'm sorry you feel that way." God, that phrase. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't an apology. It was a diplomatic shutdown. The same kind he'd used toward the end of our marriage every time I'd begged him to talk. I watched him walk back to the car. April was in the passenger seat, bouncing Owen on her knee. Leela waved from the back window. And I felt nothing. Not rage, not jealousy, not grief. Just emptiness, like something inside me had finally burned through. I didn't cry that night, didn't drink, didn't text my sister or spiral on social media. Instead, I opened a blank Word doc. And I wrote, "I was not the villain in this story. I was just the one who got blamed because I walked away second." I spent the next few days revisiting everything. Old texts, emails, even journals I hadn't opened in years. And with every reread, a sick clarity settled in. Mark had been gone long before I left. He just didn't have the guts to be the first to walk away. So he waited. He waited for me to say I need space, and then slid through that crack like it was a pre-planned escape hatch. I hadn't left him. I'd made it convenient for him to leave me. And that truth broke something open. Not just anger, not just pain, something deeper. A sense of how thoroughly I'd been edited out of my own story. I thought, what if I stopped performing hurt? What if I stopped trying to look dignified, or okay, or like I've moved on? What if I let it all burn? That weekend, instead of preparing Leela's favorite snacks or putting on my together mom face, I sat her down on the couch and told her the truth. My version. "I made a mistake when I asked Daddy for space," I said, "but I want you to know something important. Grown-ups sometimes don't say what they feel, and sometimes they wait for someone else to make the hard move." She looked confused. "Did you do something wrong?" "No, baby, I didn't, and neither did Daddy. But I didn't leave because I stopped loving him. I left because I didn't know who I was anymore. And when I tried to come back, Daddy had already made a new choice." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want anyone to be sad," she whispered. "I know," I said, "but it's okay if they are, it's okay if I am." We cried together, and for the first time in months, it felt like we were actually connected. Not coexisting, not shuttling between households, but sitting in the same grief, nomming it out loud. The next day, I blocked April on Instagram. Not out of spite. Out of survival. I deleted the shared photo albums with Mark, stopped replying with forced pleasantries to his texts, told him from now on we'd use a co-parenting app for logistics. He pushed back. "Don't you think that's a little cold?" "No," I said, "I think it's overdue." Then I unfollowed his mother, his sister, the mutual friends who still messaged me once in a blue moon with "just wanted to say hi, pity." I didn't want to be remembered as his ex-wife. I wanted to be remembered as someone separate. Someone whole. That night, I sat down and finished the essay I started in part 5. It wasn't for anyone, just me, but when I read it aloud, to no one but the silence, I felt something shift. I wasn't just mourning him anymore. I was mourning the version of me who let herself shrink so someone else could grow, who gave up space to be easy, cool, accommodating. That woman was gone. The next few weeks were strange, not good, not bad, just still. Leela noticed. "You're quieter lately," she said. "I'm listening more," I told her. She smiled, to me. To you, to myself, to the quiet. Then one day, a friend from my book club texted. "My cousin's moving to the city. She's a single mom too. Thought maybe you two would get along." I hesitated. I didn't need another sob story buddy. I didn't need wine nights comparing exes or trading custody battle scars. But then again, maybe I needed someone who wouldn't see me as half a pear, just as Rachel. We met at a coffee shop. Her name was Jules. She was funny, sharp, didn't ask about Mark, didn't flinch when I said the word divorce. She'd been through it too, different kind of mess, same kind of grief. We talked for 3 hours straight. Not about parenting. Not about pain. About books, politics, existence, ourselves. It felt like inhaling, after holding my breath underwater for a year. And on the walk home, something strange happened. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder what Mark was doing. I didn't mentally compare Jules to April or myself to the woman I used to be. I just walked. Present. Light. Empty in the way that makes space for something new, not in the way that guts you. That night, I made a decision. I was done looking backward. Done rewriting history. Done competing in a race no one was running but me. I pulled out a box from the closet, my wedding keepsakes, the letters we used to write each other, baby announcements, first anniversary cards. I read every word. Then I threw them out. Not angrily, not dramatically. Just quietly. Because they were from another life. And mine was just beginning. Leela turned 7 in April. She wanted a unicorn party, not the cartoon kind, she was over that phase. No, she wanted a magical garden unicorn tea party. Her words. And somehow, through Pinterest boards and late-night DIY fails, I made it happen. A park picnic with paper lanterns, glittery cupcakes, and tiny sandwiches cut into stars. Mark and April were invited, of course. It wasn't about me anymore, it was about Leela. And Leela wanted her whole family there, every piece of it. I'd rehearsed that day in my mind 100 times. I'd show up poised, serene, effortless in a flowy dress, smiling like I didn't care, like their presence didn't twist something inside me. But when I saw them arrive, April holding Owen, Mark carrying the gift bag with little unicorn horns peeking out, I didn't feel twisted. I felt outside. Not in the painful way I used to, not like a rejection. Just a recognition. That chapter was over. April greeted me kindly. She wore a pale lavender wrap dress and brought gluten-free cookies. Owen giggled in her arms. Mark gave me a polite nod. I returned it. We stood across from each other while Leela opened presents. She squealed with delight at everything. Her joy filled the space between us like sunlight through stained glass. Later, as the kids played tag and the adults helped clean up, April bent down to tie Leela's shoe. Mark wiped icing from Owen's cheek. I watched them. They looked like a team. A unit. A family. And instead of envy, I felt a strange, aching gratitude. Not because they were perfect, but because they weren't pretending. Because someone was finally giving my daughter the kind of peace I never knew how to provide in that last year before the unraveling. Because Mark, for all his flaws, was being the father I used to hope he'd become. Not for me. For her. After the party, as the crowd thinned and Leela clung to my hand, I watched April and Mark load Owen into his car seat. They looked over at us. April smiled. "Thank you for inviting us. This was really lovely." I nodded. Leela deserved it. Mark stepped forward, hesitated. Then he said something that, for the first time in a long time, didn't sound rehearsed. "You're doing a great job with her, Rachel. I mean that." I blinked, thank you. No resentment. No bitterness. Just the barest thread of recognition between two people who once thought they'd grow old together, but who now only share a daughter and a history too fragile to touch. We left the park as the sun dipped low. Leela clutched a balloon and a glittery bag of party favors. She chattered nonstop the whole ride home. That night, after I tucked her in, I stood by her doorway for a long time. Watching her sleep, cheeks flushed from laughter, hair tangled like vines on a wild little flower. And I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who asked for space. The one who thought she was just pressing pause. I don't hate her anymore. She was trying to survive, trying to find something under all the expectations, the mothering, the marriage. She was lost, but she was brave enough to say it out loud. I was angry with her for so long, blamed her, punished her. But now, I finally understand her. She needed to fall apart to see what mattered. And maybe, she needed to lose what she thought was everything, so she could finally start building something real. Not with Mark. Not in comparison to April. Just for me. I don't know what comes next. But for the first time in 2 years, I'm not afraid of the blank page. Because it's mine. And I get to write it.